All right, so I am just showing off how I use Codex, the app by OpenAI, to do some of the work that I do. Primarily, I've been using Codex to build out functionality for the Mailinator SDKs that I'm updating. So, if you look on the left-hand side here, you're going to see this thing called threads. Threads are actually grouped by projects. So I have several projects: testingconferences.org, Mailinator Ruby client, Mailinator JavaScript client. And under each of those is a thread. And a thread is just a chat interface. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm talking to testingconferences.org, and I'm trying to figure out how to build a newsletter campaign using the API rather than going through the interface, because I think it'll save me a lot of time. But as you can see, this is basically just a chat interface. The thing that's different between this and, say, ChatGPT is that I have a terminal here at the bottom. I mean, these are all configurable things. I can turn the terminal off, hide it, show it. The terminal is scoped not only to the repository, which is the project, but it's also scoped to the branch. You can switch branches. This is now showing me unstaged changes. So this is essentially my get diff over here. I can show this. I can do basically everything except for view the code of the repository. And there's this thing called handoff, which allows you to switch or even open into VS Code. The handoff is to a different work tree. But I can open this directly in Visual Studio Code if I want, just by clicking this button, and then it opens my repo. And that's kind of the thing about Codex, is that you have a project, which is most likely a repository, and then you can just start a bunch of chat conversations. You can start many conversations at once. When I'm doing the Mailinator SDK updates, I'm actually bouncing between a couple of different SDKs and just kind of doing the same workflow. Please implement this. It's going to go read the code and attempt something. And so you can kind of go back and forth and manage these different things. And even within a single thread, you can then use agents. I've only started to use agents. You can see in this one over here called Chief OS. One of the first things I did, I just used a template, a suggested prompt, I should say, called spawn a subagent to explore this repo, and it did. It actually created, I think this is why they're called threads. It's not just a chat interface, but it actually split off a separate thread, and then it went off and did its work in a separate thread and then bubbled everything up. And so you can kind of, with Codex, there's lots of stuff. I haven't even begun to kind of dive into the automations and a lot of the skills, but I am using it to build out, like I said, some Mailinator updates to the SDKs, and then I'm even using it right now to explore creating Mailinator, not to be confused with the Mailinator SDK stuff I'm doing, but I'm using it right now for testingconferences.org, figuring out how to actually build my newsletters using the MailChimp API instead of through the UI. My daily driver in terms of the AI tool that I use is actually Visual Studio Code. As I said in the article that's going to come along with this, my daily driver is Visual Studio Code. I've been using VS Code for a very long time to be able to write test automation in some companies, small startups, a lot of open source software. This was the primary IDE. And so I've worked with Visual Studio Code for a long time. So it was a natural thing when Copilot initially came out. I got a Copilot subscription. Copilot is very inexpensive. I think it's $100 a year for the first paid tier. And that gets you, if you kind of look at the screen here, that gets you, some number of premium requests. And, you can choose any number of models. I usually lately do this auto version, and I let Copilot choose which models to use because it gives a discount on what it's going to use. But with Copilot, and Visual Studio Code, it's Visual Studio Code with a chat interface, and then you get some context menu items, like I can have it explain something to me, review something, I can open a chat. Basically, all these things throw whatever lines of code I'm looking at into the chat. And it really is kind of like your Copilot. It's really just something that kind of helps you out. I can ask it questions, it can make changes, but it's going to do everything within this chat interface here. And I can see it on my screen. And it's a lot of hand holding. If I tell it to go do something, I have to say, yes, this is what I want to do. And I have to constantly approve the actions that it takes. So it's much more of an assistant. Whereas what I was showing with Codex, Codex is really the chat interface, and it'll go off and do a bunch of stuff without too much guidance, which has good things and bad things about it. And this is Antigravity by Google. So this is one of my favorite all-around tools. It looks very much like Visual Studio Code. It's got the chat interface on the right. It's got, you can always open and close a terminal at the bottom here. But Antigravity feels different, and it's more put together. It's kind of a combination between Codex and Visual Studio Code, in that it's not just a Copilot. You can give it instructions, but it's really built around just a much nicer interface. It will run with agents. You can give it something. It uses Gemini 3.1 Pro, and it has a really good planning mode. And what that means is when I give it something to do, it will plan in advance what it's going to do and then show it to me. And it'll show it to me in a full screen version. And that allows me to kind of go, I like this plan, I don't like this plan, please change this. And then it'll go ahead and do it. Codex, you can flip it into a planning mode, but it doesn't start there by default. Or at least I haven't figured out how to start it there by default. But it's just more robust. So again, you're still in an IDE, you get to look at all the code that you're using, but it's a lot more hands-off, and it's a lot more, I think, fun to use than Visual Studio Code. The only downside is it has limits to what you can use. I mean, everything has limits. Even with the paid version of Copilot that I have, it has limits. I've hit the limits a few times within Antigravity here, and then you end up using your Gemini 3.1 Pro, and then you maybe use Flash, and then you can go to Claude or Sonnet. I think this is my favorite IDE. And even though Visual Studio Code is kind of like my daily driver, I default to that. My system defaults to that. I really like going into Antigravity because I like the whole experience, the whole package it puts together. So these are just a couple of the AI the AI stack that I use right now. I've got some other tools. I use Goose. I used a tool called Handy, which lets me do some dictation. But these are kind of like the three primary drivers that I have right now in terms of coding things and just interacting with AI outside of the chatbots. Gemini is my primary chatbot. I think Gemini was the first one to incorporate all in the chat interface. You could ask it things, but you could also have it create images, and I have it create blog images. So what's going to go along with this blog, what's going along with this video is this blog post of me talking about my AI tooling stack, and this stick figure image and the stick figure images that I've been using for my blog, they all come from Gemini. And I'm starting to include stuff. You all will see this because I'm going to publish this video along with this article. So my daily driver for chatbot is Gemini. I do use some ChatGPT and the occasional Perplexity, but I'm happy to show off the tools that I'm using and the AI stack that I use, mostly because I think a lot of this stuff is going to change in the very near future. So much is happening. I'm trying to understand what all this code generation is going to mean downstream, because obviously testers and testing and quality come from that. I'm trying to figure out how best to write automated tests and where they sort of fit into people's understanding of what they get from AI. because AI coding agents, all these systems are based on predicting a next token. Even though they have planning models on top, they're still based on predicting a next token, and they're still random. You can ask an AI coding agent, and I see this a lot with Codex, where I go back and forth between the Mailinator JavaScript SDK and the Mailinator Ruby SDK. I will give it the same basically requirements, the same ask, and it'll completely vary each time how it goes about solving that problem, which varies the problems it runs into, which varies its the way it handles something, how fast it handles something, and then ultimately the output. It's really, really fascinating. So this is what my AI stack looks like in March of 2026. Thanks.